Hello, welcome back to the True Crime Never Sleeps show. As always, I'm your host, Larry Leese. Today, we're going to take a look back into the Idaho 4 murders and just give you an update because there were about 2,200 pages of new documents just released in the investigation, mostly forensic reports that were released by the Idaho State Police. I started going through them last night. I was up a lot of the night and then continued going through them this morning. I want to go through the things that stood out to me most. First of all, for the first time, we are seeing the knife sheath. This is the knife sheath that was found at 1122 King Road, the one that Brian Kohberger left behind. Then the sheath that really, in a way, solved the entire case. A lot of people were like, why haven't we seen the knife sheath yet? All these crime scene photos have come out. Where's the knife sheath? Well, here it is. This is the knife sheath that we've been talking about for so long. There are a bunch of different photos, but you can see that they all have sort of different diagrams of it, measurements of it. They show the areas where they swabbed and the areas on the bottom where they found the pieces of DNA. Remember, it was the button of the knife sheath where they found the DNA. That is the DNA that they tested, sent out, and then did the ancestral DNA tests on, which ended up tracing back to Brian Kohberger. So this is pretty significant that we now have these photos and that we can see the knife sheath for ourselves. It obviously says K-Bar, United States Marine Corps, USMC. We knew what it was going to look like, and we had seen other versions of it. We knew what the K-Bar knife looked like, but we had not actually seen the knife sheath that was found in the house. Again, this was the smoking gun evidence. This was the big mistake that Brian Kohberger made, leaving the knife sheath behind. That one piece of DNA found on the button clip. So, within these 2,200 pages of documents, there's a ton in there about the DNA testing. It's really hard to understand. It's a lot of numerical values and way above my head. But I would say about 75% of the new documents relate to that. There's also a lot of email exchanges where they're explaining who's taking custody of different evidence at different times, timelines, signatures, signing off, moving evidence around. That was another big chunk of the documents. There are some emails that are really interesting too, like this one, which seems applies to knife sheath, and it says, quote, the DNA profile obtained from item 1.1 was determined to be from an unknown male. Ethan Chapin and a redacted name are not the source of DNA on this item. The DNA was entered into the combined DNA index system to be routinely searched against the database. So it seems that the knife sheath that they're talking about, they initially figured out that DNA wasn't connected to Ethan, and then we know from there the process began where they were trying to narrow it down to figure out exactly who it belonged to. This is what a lot of the pages will look like in the newly released batch of documents. We're kind of used to this at that point, but a lot of the pages are still redacted. I'm assuming a lot of these redacted pages are again because this has so much to do with DNA. These new documents that were released because they did the genetic genealogy, the ancestral DNA testing, they had to go back and look at Brian Kohberger's relatives and sort of trace it back that way through cousins, aunts, and uncles. All of that stuff is secret. Obviously, those people have absolutely nothing to do with the case, and the judge wanted that stuff to stay redacted. That's why a lot of these pages still look like, um, documents with big black holes in them. Also, there's a lot in here documenting what different crime scene investigators found in different rooms, what they found in the rooms at 1122 King Road. It's all handwritten here, circular stains, all sort of stains that they found. But they also did this at Brian Kohberger's apartment too in Pullman, Washington. So this is also really interesting. Remember that when they traced through ancestral DNA and figured out that they thought it was Brian Kohberger, they realized he was in Pennsylvania. He had gone home to Pennsylvania and was with his parents for Christmas break. Remember, they went through the trash. They got a warrant to go through the trash at his parents' house to then test items in the trash for DNA and try to make the connection back to the DNA that was found on the knife sheath. We knew they went through the trash, and that was this secret operation. We know how. We now have the photos of the trash items that they pulled. I did verify that these are items from Pennsylvania. There are band-aids that they took out. Some of this stuff is kind of gross, by the way. There's band-aids, and then there was what looks like a straw that they pulled out. It said it was swabbed for DNA. Excuse me. There are these pink earplugs that they pulled. They say the entire surface area was swabbed. There's also these nail clippers that were swabbed and some flossers that were swabbed for DNA. Again, all this came out of the trash. And this is kind of the gross part. There are Q-tips, which are really gross now that I'm looking at them. They were swabbed, and I believe it's with the Q-tips, the DNA on the Q-tips that they ended up testing and tracing back to, I believe it was Brian Kohberger's dad, if I'm not wrong, which then they used to trace back to Brian Kohberger. There's also a coffee cup, and then this looks like another straw that they swabbed for DNA, and then just a bunch of water bottles. Basically, all this really important because this was the trash pull, and this is how they made the final connection to Brian Kohberger. And then they made the arrest in Pennsylvania. You'll remember they pulled him in, and there was a short interview with him where he really didn't say much, but all of that went down in Pennsylvania. And then he was brought back to Latah County, Idaho, to face the charges. Just remember, they flew him back on that small single-engine plane that took what felt like forever. But I want to read you this. This was an email that actually stood out to me. It was a police report, actually, that stood out to me in these new documents. So when Brian Kohberger got back to Idaho, they did more testing on him, actually. So that police report says on January 5th, 2023, approximately 1351, which is 151, forensic scientist, of course, name redacted, and I arrived at the Latah County Jail to assist with collection of photographs. I think it's buccal swabs, friction ridge exemplars, and hair samples from one subject, Brian Kohberger. We were accompanied by Gideon Roberts of the Idaho State Police and Travis Shirley of the FBI. Also present were Ann Taylor from the Public Defender's Office. Of course, we know that would go on to be Brian Kohberger's main attorney, and associates, as well as jail personnel. They go on to explain that once Brian Kohberger got to Latah County, they photographed him for his identification, collected 2 simultaneous buccal swabs from his mouth, collected friction ridge exemplars of his fingers and palms, collected plucked hair samples from 4 areas of the head and arms, 1 sample from the front of the head, the back of the head, right arm, and left arm. Then they left the Latah County Jail. I just thought that was kind of interesting that they did all that right when he got to the jail. In terms of evidence, they had Brian Kohberger's Hyundai Elantra at this point. We've seen some photos that show they really took the car apart because remember, they were looking not only in his apartment, but also in the car for any evidence that they could find at that point. To my knowledge, they never found any evidence in the car that was important, or any DNA, or any hairs, or anything that traced back to the victims, at least in the reports that I've been able to see. But it's interesting, they really pulled the car apart. These photos, there's new photos that were within the 2,200 or so pages that were released. You can see really how much they pulled it apart. There's the seat, the cushion of the seat that they actually took off. You can see all the different diagrams and the different parts of the seat that they tested. There's another close-up of the seat. This is apparently a stain that they saw and tested. Again, I don't think any of this traced back to anything related to the case. They actually took the cushion out of the seat, which is interesting, and tested the cushion itself. This is actually what looks like the brake pedal of the Hyundai, so they took the brake pedal off and were testing that. I guess because, remember, there was soil on the bottom of his shoe that they were interested in. This appears to be the blinkers, so they actually took off the blinkers and the controllers on the steering column, like the windshield wiper controller and everything on the steering wheel. They took that off and tested it, and then they've got a whole diagram of that. This looks like the shifter, so this is the gear knob shifter that they tested. It just shows the level of detail that they went to when they were testing all of this. Just to backtrack for a second, there's another email in here that I saw that was interesting from earlier, so let's go back to when they first got the knife sheath. Apologies that I'm bouncing around a lot, but this is from November 16th. It's an email from Idaho State Police to some other people within the crime scene unit there. And it says, or I should say, they say, I was just informed a trooper will be delivering a knife sheath from the scene today. They're requesting DNA, latent prints, and if we see any trace, to preserve that and notify Matthew so we can arrange trace analysis. They do not have a suspect and are requesting this to be rushed to try to develop any possible leads. They've been made aware that we will need reference samples and major case prints from all 4 victims. They also indicated it appears to be one of the victims fought back, and they have requested fingernail samples from her be collected at autopsy. I believe the autopsies are happening today or tomorrow. My guess is they will be in Spokane, but I do not have confirmation of that. So that's what someone at Idaho State Police sent out to other investigators. It just shows, I think the urgency that there was at the time. Once they got the knife sheath, they knew it was really important to start testing it since they didn't have any leads. I'm going to keep going through all the documents. That really what stood out to me the most. Again, there's a lot of very detailed numerical figures when it comes to DNA, but I think seeing the knife sheath to me was really the biggest development out of this document dump. Also new is the DoorDash driver. Remember, there was a DoorDash driver who showed up at the scene and saw Kohberger out there on King Road delivering DoorDash to the house. We've reported we've reported on her. I've mentioned her a few times, I think, in previous videos. But now for the first time, we actually have the police video, not body cam, but video from inside the interview room when they interviewed the DoorDash driver. I thought this was interesting because there are some new details in her description of what she saw that I actually hadn't heard before. So I want to play you some of this.
There at night at that house?
Yes, I have. Yep.
Okay, so you know that the number for the house is right there under the light, and it's very hard to see at night. That was probably my biggest problem, was trying to find the number. I didn't actually realize that I was there, which is why I was probably there for about 15 minutes. And my clock, or my map on my phone that tells me where to go, kept telling me to go up and around. Instead of, I actually initially pulled and parked up right there, parked right in front, but I didn't see the number, so I didn't know, and my map kept telling me to go up and around and in there. I kind of walked around with my flashlights on my phone trying to figure out where it was. I remember when I pulled up, I saw the girl in the window that he told you about, up at that top window on the left. I would swear that she was swinging on a hammock or something, but she could have just been on the top of a bed or something. It seemed odd because she was watching me. And usually when you do an order and somebody sees you, if that's where it's from, they see you, they come running down to the door, whether it's a no contact order or not. And she jumped right down as soon as she saw me and saw that I saw her. I noticed several times as I was walking around and trying to find the place, she would pop back up in the window and I would see her again.
Okay. Give me 1 second. This is it. Oh, okay. Short is short.
Thank you.
Those are pretty good. I don't know if you have them. They're pretty good.
I haven't. So I thought it was weird that she kept jumping in and out of the window. Long brown hair, younger girl. There were parties going on all around, lots of noise. I mean, they were everywhere. At one point, I remember I got in my car and I actually drove up here to see, because I thought maybe there was a road but I do remember that when I was walking with my flashlight on that road, there's nobody out there and it's dark. And I'm a girl and I've got a flashlight. A car came driving by. It was a sedan. It was tan. And the gentleman that was driving, I remember it because it was odd that he did not look at me. You see a girl out there walking around with a flashlight. You look, you see what's going on, and with her, nothing, just completely zoned and out of it, almost. And that's why I thought it was odd that he just drove by me. There was no stopping or anything. And eventually walked back up to my car, got my car, drove down, and I was like, this has got to be the house the way the numbers are going. And so I pulled into the drive in there, and that's when I noticed that the light had been blocking the numbers. And I saw the car after I had already parked up here, and I was walking down.
Walking down.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was driving down. We were right around here when he went through.
Okay. So you come around, so then you go drop everything off. Did you see the car again after that? Did you?
It did not.
Did not?
It left.
Okay.
It's just, the only reason, like I said, I remembered it was because it was odd that he didn't look at me or wonder what the heck I was doing.
Yeah.
And he was very just, you know.
Looking straight ahead.
Yeah, and there was nothing. And so that seemed odd to me.
Okay.
Especially to be a girl in the dark. There's not a lot of light on that road
No,
at
it's
all.
dark. Yeah.
And to be walking around with a flashlight and looking around and poking around somebody's yard,
Yeah.
you would think most people stop and they're like, "Are you okay? Is
Right.
everything all right?"
Especially early morning.
Exactly. It just seemed odd to me.
So when you, and I've been up there quite a bit, but you know the road's fairly narrow.
Yes.
Were you pretty close to this car? Were
Yes,
you?
I mean, it drove right by me.
How close do you think it was?
Not very far. I mean, I'm walking on the road. I didn't walk in the grass or anything.
Yeah.
And so there's not a lot of space, as you said. And
Yeah.
then there's cars parked
Right.
right there, too. So, I mean, he was right there.
Okay. Did you notice anything about the car? Any sound or anything out of the ordinary?
No, and I've been racking my brain, too. Cause
No,
it seemed so odd for him to be there. He didn't seem out of place. He actually seemed very in place. Just his demeanor and everything, he just did not look at all, not even to turn his head.
When you say you look like he in place, what do you mean by that?
He didn't look disheveled or like at 4 o'clock in the morning trying to get ready for work and you're half asleep or something like that, or running or late, or it just, he seemed like very put together and just, yeah.
Could you describe that person for me?
I would say blonde hair. He was male. I would say it's hard because he's sitting down, so but blonde. I would say maybe a light because maybe a beard, kind of like a short.
Okay.
I keep trying to rack my brain if there was glasses or not, and I can't remember if he had glasses on or not.
Was he white?
White,
Hispanic?
yes.
White?
Yes, sorry, he was white.
Okay.
And blonde, very light blonde. Not the dark blonde where it could almost be brown, but very light blonde. Short hair, clean cut.
Did you notice anything about clothes or anything like that?
Light clothes, but not anything that would stand out. I would almost say he had the light on in the car, now that I think about it, because to see him that well on that street, he would have to have the light on in the car, the dome light.
Yeah.
Because I saw him very clearly, which seems odd for him to have the dome light on. Because I didn't flash the flashlight on him or anything, it just, I turned around and I looked, because the car didn't want to get hit by a car.
Yeah.
And I assumed he would look at me and wonder what I was doing, like most people do.
Yeah. So when you're out and about, and I know you told me you've been up there twice before that night, is it common to see cars driving through there? I mean, did you see traffic when you're up there earlier? Do you see people about can you just describe
I
the general vibe of the place?
Anybody really, both deliveries, I had to drive up and I came up and around and in the middle, they were both in here, a car coming up from behind me, from my right. They hear the car, it's slow. And I turned to my side to look at it because I know I don't want to get hit, there's not a lot of room. And it's at night, I'm with a flashlight, I'm expecting somebody to like be sitting there gawking at me, wondering what the heck I'm doing, because that's kind of crazy. And turning around, and it's a tan light colored car driving by me. It's not going fast, it's not going particularly slow. The dash light is on, it's very easy to see inside. But he's very into what he's doing. He doesn't look at me, and he seems very just not paying attention to anything else going on, but the light's on in the car for some reason, and it's very light inside the car. I don't see anything, bags or anything in the seats. I remember seeing the seats, and nothing like a bag or anything hanging around. He had a light colored dress shirt on, short hair, almost pokey. I don't want to say spiky, pokey hair, and a beard that was not a long beard, a very short. Like just, not that like he hasn't shaved in a couple days, but it's been a while. But not like he was, I don't know, purposely or not. But older, not a college student. Didn't seem like he should have been right there. And the fact that he didn't even look at me was very strange.
Interview. This time frame is pretty soon after the murders, and this is the DoorDash driver who was out there delivering food and apparently saw Brian Kohberger on the street when she was delivering to the house very shortly before the murders. So the detective asked, "Have you been there at night at that house?" The driver says, "Yes, I have." The detective, "Okay, so do you know that the number for the house is right there under the light and it's very hard to see at night?" She responds that was probably her biggest problem, trying to find the number. She didn't actually realize she was at the correct house. That's why she was probably there for about 15 minutes. Her phone kept telling her to go up and around. She initially pulled and parked right in front, but she didn't see the number, so she didn't know. And her phone kept redirecting her to go up and around. She kind of walked around with her flashlight on her phone, trying to figure out where the house was. She remembers when she pulled up that she saw a girl in the window, the one the detective had mentioned to her before. She says it was the top window on the left. She swore the girl was swinging on a hammock or something, but she could have just been on the bed. It seemed odd because the girl was watching her, and usually when you do a delivery and someone sees you, they come down to the door, whether it's a no contact delivery or not. She said the girl jumped down as soon as she saw that the driver had seen her. The driver noticed several times as she was walking around trying to find the house that the girl would pop back up in the window. She would see her again. She says, "I thought it was weird that she kept jumping in and out of the window. Long brown hair, younger girl. Definitely there were parties going on all around. Lots of noise, I mean, they were everywhere." At one point, she remembers getting into her car and driving up to see if maybe there was a road behind the house. She remembers that while she was walking with her flashlight on that road, dark, nobody else around, the car came driving by. It was a sedan, tan colored. She describes the man driving the car as not looking at her at all. She found that odd. You see a girl out walking with a flashlight, you'd expect someone to glance, stop, or react in some way, but he didn't. He was just zoned out, staring ahead. She thought it was very strange. And then she said, there was no stopping or anything. I eventually walked back to my car, got in, drove down, and realized this had to be the house based on how the numbers were going. Pulled into the drive, and that's when I noticed that the light had been blocking the numbers. She says she saw the car after she had already parked, and while she was walking down, the man in the car was driving past her. They were pretty close. She was walking on the road, not the grass, and there wasn't a lot of space. There were cars parked on the side, so the car came right by her. When asked if she noticed anything about the car, like sounds or anything, she said no. But it seemed odd for him to be there. He didn't seem out of place, but his demeanor was strange. She says he seemed very put together, not disheveled like someone out at 4 a.m. getting ready for work or anything. When asked to describe the man, she says, "I would say blonde hair. He was male. It's hard because he was sitting down, but blonde. I'd say maybe a beard, kind of like a short beard." She continues, "I keep trying to rack my brain if there were glasses or not, and I can't remember if he had glasses. He was white, very light blonde hair, not that dark blonde where it could almost be brown, very light blonde, short hair, clean cut. Possibly a beard, short, maybe a little scruffy. I keep going back and forth on whether he had glasses, and I can't remember." They also ask if she noticed anything about his clothes. She says, "Light colored clothes, but nothing that would stand out." She goes on to say, "I think he had the dome light on in the car because I could see him very clearly." Which is weird. Why would someone have the dome light on, especially at that time? She then clarifies, "I didn't flash my flashlight into the car or anything. I turned around because I didn't want to get hit, and I expected him to look at me. Most people would. He didn't. Then the detective asked if it's common to see traffic in that area when she's making deliveries. She says, "No, not really. I've been there quite a bit, but both deliveries I had were right in the middle. You don't see a lot of cars up there late at night." So, again, very interesting. If this case had gone to trial, her testimony probably would have played a big role. But of course, that didn't happen because we had the plea deal, and Brian Kohberger is now serving his life sentence. The last thing I want to talk about is something coming up this week. There will be a hearing, which is kind of unexpected. Didn't think we'd go back in court again with all sides, but there's going to be a hearing with Brian Kohberger, his attorneys, including Ann Taylor, and the prosecution. This hearing is about additional restitution. Remember, as part of his plea deal, Kohberger was required to pay restitution, specifically funeral costs for the victims' families. That was already heartbreaking as the families had to submit receipts for their child's funeral, which, I mean, it's just awful. But now the state is asking him to pay additional restitution, this time for travel expenses and other related costs, and Kohberger is fighting back. His attorney, Ann Taylor, filed a motion basically saying, look, the families had GoFundMes. Brian Kohberger should not have to pay additional restitution. And that's why this hearing is now scheduled. I want to read you the new motion filed by the prosecution outlining why they believe he should pay. A lot of people have gone on the social media, pretty much saying, why he doesn't really have any money anyway, so what's the point? And why is this even a big deal? The reason this matters is because Kohberger is going to spend the rest of his life in prison, and in prison, inmates can receive money from families or third parties, and that money goes right into his commissary accounts. And the state can garnish that money, meaning they can take a percentage of it to pay off restitution orders. So this is a way for the families to continue receiving compensation, even if it's small and over time. And people have already been sending him money in jail. All he really has to look forward to now is commissary. Being able to buy snacks, deodorant, hygiene items, food, etc. So if the court orders additional restitution, the victims' families can receive a portion of his commissary money for the rest of his life. So this is a section from the state's response to the defendant's objection to the restitution request, saying, quote, "The case will continue to attract worldwide attention, which could result in the defendant prospectively receiving monies subject to interception by the state's treasurer pursuant to Idaho code." So what they're saying is if he receives money while in prison, whether from family, supporters, or random people, the state should be able to intercept it and direct a portion to the victims. The defense argued that restitution shouldn't be ordered because Kohberger has no ability to earn or pay money given his life sentence. But the prosecution points to Idaho law, which requires restitution unless the court deems it inappropriate or undesirable. The state also points out there is a history of the defendant receiving financial contributions from family and third parties. In fact, they say they're attaching a summary of all the contributions made to Kohberger while he was in custody at both the Ada County Jail and Latah County Jail. That summary is sealed, but the point is, people have been sending him money. You'd assume his family sent some money, or sent some of it, but also seems that strangers are sending money too. There's always that weird phenomenon where people, usually women, get obsessed with killers and start writing to them or sending money, even becoming pen pals. So that appears to be happening here. And the prosecution is saying people are going to send Kohberger money, the family should get a piece of it. And the judge will probably rule on this week, or at least the hearing is scheduled for this coming week. Interestingly, this is actually similar to what happened to the Lori Vallow case, the so-called cult mom who killed her kids. She had a similar restitution hearing recently in Idaho, where she was also fighting against having to pay. It's crazy to me that they're fighting this hard over restitution after everything he's admitted to. But that's the latest with the new document dump. I'll keep going through the remaining pages and let you know if I find anything else that's significant or surprising. But just to recap, we now have official photos of the knife sheath with clear documentation of the DNA area on the blunt clip. We saw the trash pull from Pennsylvania, the Q-tips, the straws, water bottles, and all swabbed and crucial in tying DNA to Kohberger's family, which then tied back to Brian Kohberger. There's handwritten logs and reports from the crime scenes, both at King Road and his apartment. They completely dismantled his Hyundai Elantra. We saw an email from November 16th showing how urgently law enforcement began processing the knife sheath. And for the first time, we saw the interview room video with the DoorDash driver. So the biggest takeaways to me are the visual confirmation of the knife sheath and how central it was to the case, and the DNA trail built through ancestral genealogy, starting from the sheath and ending in Pennsylvania. And thirdly, how, even now, the legal and emotional impact of this case is still unfolding for the victim's family. There's still more to go through, and I'll keep you posted if anything major jumps out in the rest of the 2,200 pages. With that, thank you so much for watching and listening. I'll catch you on the next episode. As always, if you want to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TCNS. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.